I'm delighted to be talking to Bree Aesie. Bree is the co-founder of the Aesie English School, and she is also the host of Into the Story podcast. Bree is also going to be at the Advanced English Summit, and her talk is called Why Emotion Makes Learning Languages Easier. Welcome, Bree.
Thank you, Claire. It's wonderful to be here.
Well, thank you, Bree. Your talk sounds really, really fascinating. And my question to you then is, why do emotions make learning languages easier?
Yeah, it's a good question. And I think probably when most of us think about emotions or being emotional, we have this idea in our mind. What do you think of, Claire, when you hear the word emotional?
Well, I associate it with negative emotions, that maybe you're crying or you're really upset about something.
Exactly. I think that is a very common perception.
Mm.
When we hear the word emotions or emotional, we think of negative emotions. We think of weakness, crying, being afraid. But in fact, emotions, we're constantly experiencing emotions. And they're coming basically from our brain. Our brain is telling us how to feel about different things that we see during the day. And why this is very, very important to think about is that emotions control three things, a lot of things, but three important things for language learning. And that is motivation, or motivation for doing something, attention, the attention that we give to something, and our memory. Now, this is extremely important when we're thinking about learning a language. When we have a positive experience, for example, it can make it much easier to remember that concept or even that word. So, of course, we can see why this is very important for learning a language.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think also when we learn a language, we tend to feel quite vulnerable, don't we? Because it can be a scary thing
Mm.
to say something and you think, oh, I'm going to make a mistake here. So we do put ourselves sometimes in challenging situations when we learn a language.
Absolutely. And that's something that I'll be speaking about in my talk, the concept of being comfortable versus
Yeah.
being uncomfortable, and where we should fall on this scale of comfort and discomfort when we are learning a language. It's definitely something that was not taught when I started learning Spanish. And it would have been something that helped me so much.
Yeah.
So that will be something we'll be going into. And as well, speaking about the brain, I'm going to explain a little bit about why our brain reacts to certain things that happen in our environment and how that affects our motivation for doing things and the intention we give to things. So, yeah.
Yeah, fascinating. Thank you.
Mm.
So my next question really is about giving some advice to people watching this video. If you could give one tip about how emotions can make learning English easier,
Mm.
what would that tip be?
One tip. That's a good question. I I think if I had to give just one tip, not only for, and this comes from my personal experience, but also my experience teaching and also perhaps learning any new skill or learning how to do any new thing, would be to stop trying so hard.
Mm,
Now, this
interesting.
sounds, yes, it sounds really counterintuitive. Okay,
Yeah.
it sounds like perhaps something that doesn't really make sense coming from someone who teaches English, but I think the enemy to letting ourselves learn a language effectively can be being too serious. So Alan Watts, who's an English philosopher, said, "Don't be serious, be sincere." So
Mm,
being sincere means making the time, of course, to learn the language, whether that's listening to the podcast or watching the YouTube video or reading the book. Of course, you need to make time in your busy day. All of the adults I've ever met in my entire life are very busy people. You need to make the time for that. But once you've made that time, once you start the podcast episode, instead of being so serious about understanding every word and creating this kind of tenseness and this unpleasantness, I would recommend to be more playful. So that can be
Mm,
hard for us as adults. I have small children, so maybe I'm more in contact with this concept of playfulness, but be curious, like a genuine curiosity for, what am I going to understand? Did I understand that word? Oh, I didn't understand that word. I wonder what it means. Or, oh, what's happening? Oh, I feel excited about this. Or, oh, that feels, you know, frightening. In my podcast, for example, we have true stories told by people from all over the world. Sometimes they're sad stories. But what I want listeners to do with any content, any learning that they do, is really go there and be curious about the experience. And if you're just curious, if you just let that energy of curiosity flow, you will feel the emotions and you'll be much more likely to learn that vocabulary, learn that grammar, learn
mm.
whatever it is that you're wanting to learn. So that's what I would say. Stop trying so hard,
Well, I
everybody.
love that. I think, just from my point of view, knowing that you're genuinely interested in something and being curious takes away a lot of the stress, doesn't it? Because we put
Yes.
ourselves under a lot of pressure that, we see English as a performance, that
Mm.
I've got to give the perfect presentation, I've got to speak articulately in meetings. And that puts a lot of pressure on us. And I would say, it's the same for me. English is my first language, but when I know that I have to speak up in a serious meeting, I can't find the words, and if
Yeah.
you go in, as I say, as you saying, with that idea of curiosity, then it doesn't really matter, does it, if you don't get it right, because you're going to be learning something and you don't have all that stress. I think
Mhm.
that's absolutely fantastic. An amazing tip. Thank you so much.
Absolutely.
So for Bree's talk, make sure you come along. It's at the Advanced English Summit, and Bree's talk is going to be on Wednesday, the 17th of April at 2 p.m. UK time. Her talk will be live, so you will be able to ask questions as well. Really, really come along. I think it's going to make you feel fantastic about learning English. Bree, thank you so much. And sorry, I should mention to everyone, I will put the link in the comments. Bree, that was amazing. Thank you so much indeed.
Thank you, Claire. I'm really looking forward to it, and it was fantastic speaking with you today.
Me too. Thank you.